Alain is indicating there. Let me show you. Here is a trough of the 40-day cycle. Here's the next trough of the 40-day cycle. Now, the first trough is also, by the principle of synchronicity, a trough of the 80-day cycle. However, the second trough is not. It's a trough only of the 40-day cycle. And here is the next consecutive trough of the 40-day cycle. And this also is a trough of the 20-week cycle. So, therefore, you are drawing valid trend lines between two consecutive troughs of different cycles, effectively. No, I shouldn't say the two consecutive troughs of different cycles. I should say you're drawing between the two consecutive troughs of one cycle, but they are also, because of the principle of synchronicity, one of them will be a trough of a much longer cycle. Okay, that's what Alain is pointing out over there. Have you ever tested, Joe asks, have you ever tested keeping the cycle trough to cycle trough trend line angle but drawn from the trough in between cycles? Let me read that again. Have you ever tested keeping the cycle trough to cycle trough trend line angle, right, but drawn from the trough in between cycles? Okay, that's an interesting question. Let me see if I can find a part of our chart where we could test that. So I think the simple answer to your question, Joe, is no. But let me just have a look at a possible example, and we'll see. Here, let me zoom in. I think this will work. Let me zoom in and demonstrate what I think you're talking about, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Here we go. Let me draw, using the whiteboard, a trough of a valid trend line of the 20-day cycle, connecting this trough to that trough. So if I connect that, then price often falls down. It comes almost back up to there. Now, what Joe is suggesting is that you draw a parallel, if I understand it correctly, is you draw a parallel trend line, parallel to this one, through the trough of one shorter cycle. The trough of one shorter cycle, the mid-cycle, is this trough over here, the 10-day cycle. So that would involve drawing a parallel trend line. Sentient Trader doesn't use this, but I have done quite a lot of work many years ago now, Joe, where I tested exactly this scenario. And you know what I found often happens is that this peak over here, price often comes up to within the vicinity of this parallel trend line. It's a really interesting idea. Sentient Trader doesn't use it to trade, but it's something I did some sort of experimentation with. It comes up to close to this trend line. So it's a really interesting thing. Trend lines are very interesting to play around with, to see how price crosses them and comes back up to them. But Sentient Trader doesn't use it. I've noticed that often price comes back up to this parallel trend line. So it's something to investigate. Gosh, that takes me back a while when I was sort of playing around with that. The reason why I never really pursued it is because it was never mentioned in Hurst theory, and so it didn't really have a part in Sentient Trader. But it's certainly an interesting idea that would be great to investigate and throw around some thoughts about it, because I've noticed that it often does happen. So let me clear that whiteboard, and let's move on to a discussion about the theory of valid trend lines. I've spoken about valid trend lines in terms of the rules and how they get constructed. But now let's talk about what they are and why they work and what information we can derive from them. Because remember, these are cyclic tools. They are tools that are used to make decisions, both in terms of performing an analysis and making trading decisions. And so we'll have a look at what Hurst said about the information that we can derive from this tool. First of all, let's have a look at a picture that will make some sense. Here we go. This is an idealized price movement. Last week, when I was speaking about the FLD, I presented a chart to you, which was this chart over here, where I demonstrated to you how an FLD is simply price displaced by half the wavelength to the right, and we spoke about what FLDs mean in terms of in terms of how they interact with the price. Now, with VTLs, things are slightly more complicated, but don't get worried about that. They are slightly more complicated because VTLs are only of any use to us when we combine more than one cycle. In other words, at least 2 cycles. Okay, so if we have combined at least 2 cycles, then VTLs come into play. Why is that? That's because you can't draw a VTL on a single cycle. Well, you can, but it doesn't give us any information. If I were to draw an upward pointing VTL for this cycle, it would simply be that line along the bottom of the frame, and I can't draw a downward pointing VTL because I don't know where the next peak is. Okay, so you can't draw a VTL on only a single cycle. So we need to consider at least 2 cycles, if not 3 cycles. So let's speak about this quickly. Hurst cyclic principles state that price movement is the result of a combination of cycles. What's really important is how do those cycles combine. According to Hurst cyclic principles, they combine according to the principle of summation, which simply means that you add them up. So if you're able to quantify the amplitude of a single cycle, then all you do is you add up the 2 cycles and you combine them. And that's what's happening here in this Microsoft Excel graph. I've created a spreadsheet which combines 2 cycles, and you can see that one of the cycles is this green color over here, and the other cycle is this pink color over here. These cycles follow various rules, but we won't dwell on that now. And then I have combined them simply by adding them up, and the resultant combination is this dark blue line, which of course now that I've drawn over it is no longer dark blue, but it's that top line is the combination of those cycles. Now that's something we, or I often do when I'm talking about Hurst cyclic principles and explaining how things work. So let's take that a step further and let's combine 3 cycles. Here is a spreadsheet which simply combines 3 cycles, a yellow cycle, a pink cycle, and a pale blue cycle. The resultant price movement, if you like, or the combination of those 3 cycles, is this dark blue line up at the top. Now that we have combined more than one cycle together, we can start looking at VTLs and what information they provide us with. So let's have a look at how we would draw VTLs. We know the rules now for drawing VTLs. Rule number 1, if I wanted to draw a VTL for this pink cycle over here, I need to connect the price troughs of 2 consecutive pink cycle troughs, and I extend the line like that. So that would be an upward pointing VTL of this pink cycle over here. Okay, where is the downward pointing VTL of the pink cycle? I could combine these 2 peaks of the pink cycle, but that would not be a downward pointing VTL, it would be an upward pointing VTL. So the downward pointing VTL is in fact over here, where I connect this peak and that peak. Okay, this is applying exactly the same rules that we've already spoken about to an idealized price movement, so that you can see how that works. Now, and what about an upward pointing VTL for the yellow cycle? I draw a line between 2 consecutive troughs of the yellow cycle, and that is this line over there. All right, I've got this Excel spreadsheet to do that for me because it's all a bit tedious trying to draw things for yourself. So here are the VTLs. Those are the exact same lines that I've just drawn for you, and you can see them here. They've been done simply using an Excel spreadsheet. And so now, last week I spoke about how FLDs provide us with some information that is used for performing a phasing analysis and for making trading decisions. And there were 3 pieces of information. I will be coming back to FLDs quickly for a little recap after I've spoken about VTLs. But what pieces of information do VTLs provide us with? And in fact, FLDs provide us with 3 pieces of information, and so they are very powerful. VTLs are in some ways less powerful because they provide us with effectively only 1 piece of information. However, they are also more powerful than FLDs because they provide us with that information more timeously, should we say. So it's better information in terms of time, and when you're trading, time is very important. You don't want too much time to pass. So let's speak about the piece of information that VTLs provide you with, and that is this. When price crosses a VTL, as has happened over here, when price crosses a VTL, here price has crossed over this downward pointing VTL, then that provides us with confirmation of a cyclic nature, I like to say. It provides us with evidence or confirmation that a trough or peak of the cycle 1 degree longer than the VTL has been formed in price. So let me just go through that again. It's a little more complicated than the FLD information. When price crosses a VTL, it provides us with confirmation that either a trough or a peak has occurred in price. Of which cycle? Not the cycle upon which the VTL is based, but the cycle 1 degree longer. That's very important. FLDs provided information about the cycles upon which they were based. A 40-day FLD provided us with information about the 40-day cycle. A 20-day FLD provided us with information about the 20-day FLD. A VTL, on the other hand, provides us with information about a cycle 1 degree longer. What do I mean by 1 degree longer? Well, we have a nominal model, we have a list of cycles that are present in the market, and so when price crosses a VTL, it provides evidence of the cycle that is 1 longer than the cycle upon which the VTL is based. So let's stick for now to speaking about cycles in terms of their color. This VTL is pink in color, as you can see, because it is based upon the pink cycle at the bottom here. And I've plotted the pink cycle, the idealized pink cycle at the bottom. It's a downward pointing VTL, which, according to Rule 1, connects the peak in price of 2 consecutive cycles of the pink cycle. And there they are. 2 consecutive cycles. There's the peak in price, and there's the peak in price. They have been joined by constructing a VTL, a valid trend line. Now, when price crosses that valid trend line after, need I mention after the second peak, because if it crosses it between the 2 peaks, then according to rule number 2, you need to redraw your valid trend line. You need to displace it a little to include the price. So when price crosses after the second peak, then the VTL provides us with the information the VTLs provide us with, which is confirmation of either a trough or a peak. Now, because price is crossing over a downward VTL, we are given evidence of a trough in this instance. When price crosses over a VTL, we get evidence of a trough. When price crosses down below an upward pointing VTL, it provides us evidence of a peak, as is happening over here. I'll speak about that in a moment. So, here price crosses over the VTL. It provides us with confirmation of a trough. All right? Which trough? Very simply, the trough of 1 cycle longer than the pink cycle. What is 1 cycle longer than the pink cycle? It is a yellow cycle. So, at this point over here, where I've drawn this cross, right over here, at this point over here, this interaction between price and VTL, in other words, price crossing the VTL, has provided us with confirmation that this trough in price is a trough of the yellow cycle, which of course we know it is because this is an idealized price movement. But when you're trying to find the cycles in a price movement that you don't necessarily fully understand, that's very important and very useful information. Now let's have a look at a downward pointing VTL. I beg your pardon, downward moving price over an upward pointing VTL. Here is an upward pointing VTL, also a pink cycle VTL. It is connecting 2 consecutive troughs. Here's the 1 trough, and here is the second trough in price. The VTL connects those 2 troughs, extends upwards. Price crosses down below that VTL after, of course, the second trough. If it occurred between the 2 troughs, you would need to displace your VTL to accommodate for that price movement, which of course Sentient Trader does automatically for you. And at this point where price crosses the VTL, we are provided with evidence that there was a peak in price. A peak of what cycle, you might ask? Well, it is the cycle 1 longer than the pink cycle. The cycle 1 longer than the pink cycle is, again, the yellow cycle. And therefore, we can say with confidence that this point over here, which I've not covered,